Good morning, everyone. It's Billy, and we are here for another episode of Log Talk with Pert Near Outdoors. We are on to episode 74, and this week we're going to have my dad, Big Willie, and my brother, Big Jim, and myself get together. We did a Zoom call on Saturday night. We did it. We did a Zoom call, the three of us, to kind of just catch up, break down the first week of gun season here in New York. Chatted a little bit about each one of our success stories with our bucks. Each one of us filled our buck tags. Jimbo has shot a doe as well, and I shot a doe as well. So we've got some tags filled. Freezers are filling up, and it's been, for the most part, a pretty productive season so far. So I've been watching quite a bit, and it seems like there's been just some awesome bucks hitting the ground. But you're also hearing kind of mixed. You're either in them or you're not. You're in the right spot or you're not. This weather has not been ideal for late November. It just has not been cold at all. It's been above average, and I'm glad I've got my buck tag filled, and I'm glad I'm not stressing about trying to put the pieces together because the cameras are giving me no intel. Not seeing much in the field. There's just not a lot going on. So I feel bad for those of you that are out there trying to fill that tag right now. It looks like on the positive, we've got some colder weather coming this week, so hopefully towards the end of the weekend, we've got maybe a chance of snow on the ground here, up in western New York especially, or maybe up in the off of Lake Ontario, maybe get a little lake effect snow. Looks like we might get some of those westerly winds this time of year that seem to always produce us a little bit of snow. So fingers crossed there. That's really what we need to get things cranking and turn things on. So that's what this discussion is going to be about with the three of us. I hope you enjoy it. It's always fun to get together with Dad and Jimmy and chat. And I think this is only the second time we've ever done it for the podcast. So in a little over a year, this is only the second time we've ever done an episode, and the first episode was the only other time we did it. So definitely fun chatting with these guys, and it's been a season to remember for sure. On the housekeeping side of things, I've got some, just to remind everybody about the links we have for shopping on websites that will kind of tie you back to us and give us a little commission. That's how we're funding the podcast. So if you have the opportunity when you're shopping right now, I know this is the big Christmas time shopping. So if you're on shopping, or if you know you've got something that you want that you're asking Santa for, point them to go through our link tree in our bio on Instagram or on Facebook. If you go on there, you'll click on the link tree, which is a little web address that's in our bio, and it'll take you to another website which has a bunch of different stores that have, basically just click on the link. Once you click on the link, you're in and you are shopping with us. So I added another one up there today. That there's no compensation for us on this, but I think it's a great deal. We've all been using Basemap this year, trying that app out, and it's been a great tool. I really enjoyed using it, and I'm looking forward to using it here in the late season, where they have a function where you can actually see people that you're quote unquote friends with. You can follow each other on there. It's kind of like a little social setup, but you can see where they're at, updating their GPS. So if you're actually out doing some sort of a still hunt or drive, or you're hunting a piece of property together, you can actually see where the people are in live time. It updates every few minutes, and you can actually see exactly where they are. So that's a great tool. I'm looking forward to trying that out here in the late season as we start doing more hunting of that nature. So I put a link up there in our bio. If you use promo code PERTNEAR20, you get 20% off your yearly subscription, which is an awesome deal. It'll give you access to everything in the app, which most importantly gives you property boundaries and information on public and private land. That is a great deal. You'll be around $26 for the year, and that is a steal. So go over there and check them out if you have not already. But the biggies are the other links that I will make sure to point out are Cabela's, Camel Fire, Black Ovis. Those are a couple that 2-3 that get hit quite a bit, and then we've got some other links in there as well that might tickle your fancy. But you can check that out. So thanks again for everybody following along and supporting us. If you could help share this with a friend, and whether it be on your social media, or if you just tell somebody at work, hey, have you listened to that podcast with those jokers from Western New York? And I think it's that's the way we're going to keep this thing growing. So it's been a good few months. The followers are growing on social media, and the downloads are increasing. So thank you so much for everyone out there who's helping us grow and helping be part of this thing. And we're having a ton of fun doing it. So strap in, enjoy the episode. Have a good week. Good luck in the field if you're still trying to fill that tag. And you know what to do. Keep feeding them. Hello. Yeah, that's your name.
Squirrels got me.
Big Jim.
Yeah.
Really, 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 really cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
Cold and fun.
That's good that you think that of it, because that's what deer hunting typically is cold and fun.
Yesterday morning, I'm glassing up on the pass, and I see these deer moving. And I'm like, ooh, there's some deer moving. All of a sudden, I just see this person just head down, just hauling ass, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with a pack on. And I'm like, is that Tard? My dad always talks about floating through the woods like the autumn breeze.
So Robert's
when you're
the
275 pounds, I don't know how you do that, but
the Freightliner. It's just like a creeper. You're just kind of up in the corner watching what's going on down there.
yeah,
You know,
he's like,
he's up there slapping it, pissing all over everything.
is it warm yet?
How did you know the name of the actor?
That's I know.
How did you say his name?
Harvey Velichus. Remember this?
You know what pert near means.
If you know what pert near means and you live in America, you're a redneck too.
Welcome to the Log Talk Podcast, brought to you by Pert Near Outdoors. Yeah, and then he can just jump on.
What's the nature of our discussion?
Well, I don't have any show notes. You know, I come into a meeting like this unprepared with you. I feel really I feel like a father of two who's been at home with the kids for 2 days straight is what I feel like right now. So, yeah, I mean, as far as the roadmap for the discussion, I wanted to get you, Jimmy, and I on to discuss the full opening week of gun season, and we've certainly had lots of success to share stories about. So figure we take the opportunity to get the three of us together, since we haven't, I was thinking about that before I got ready to get on here. I don't think that we've done a podcast, the three of us, just the three of us, since the original pilot episode of Log Talk with Pert Near Outdoors.
Yeah, I think you're right. Him and I have been on, and you and I have been on, and you and him have been on, but all three of us haven't been together. So,
Nope.
It was definitely a good week. And you know, it's weird being opening Saturday and up there, you know, by myself all afternoon.
You're talking yesterday or
Today, opening Saturday. You know,
yeah,
used to be a big day.
you would call this opening Saturday? Isn't opening Saturday opening day?
Yeah, I guess the first Saturday is, you know, the Saturday after Thanksgiving is usually a big day, you know.
Right.
But Christ, everybody's tagged out.
Well, yeah, it's
You know?
really hard with everything going on right now to convince your family to let you go to camp and try to fill doe tags when the freezers are already full. It's kind of hard to sell that.
I know, and it's a different ballgame when you're trying to, you know, push on when there's no horns in the game. You know what I mean? It's just doe hunting.
Yeah, it's been several years for you since you've been. Well, you've shot both your bucks, I guess, consecutively in the last few years. You've done that.
Yeah, last year was the only year I didn't get 2 bucks in a doe. So
Yeah,
you know, in the last several. So I just got to get a doe now, and I'm not seeing a lot on our property, and I'm really, you know, I don't have a burning desire to shoot one off there if I was seeing groups of a half a dozen or something, or seeing them on a regular basis. But
yeah,
everything he's got horns, you know. I don't know where the does are.
Yeah. I mean, and with the hurting we've put on the bucks this year up there, it kind of makes you want to pull back on the reins a little bit and spread out if you want to shoot something else, you know, whether it go to one of our farms we have access to, or
Yeah.
go to state land or something if you really got to fill another tag. But
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'd like to take one off the state land or the Nature Conservancy or something. Fill my doe tag somewhere else. But you think about it, we haven't taken. What did we take? $3, $4, $5 off our place?
yeah.
But
isn't it funny how it ebbs and flows? Like you have one year where there's 5 or 6 does, $1 or $2, and then you'll have another year where there's 1 or 2 does, $5 or $6. It seems to go back and forth and I don't really think that's, I mean, there's probably something to that, whether it's just people's appetites to try to kill, up there, whether that's what it is. Because I don't really think there's that much of an ebb and flow in the herd.
No, and I think a lot of it's conditions and circumstances and luck. How it is up there. It's just like Angelo shooting Frank.
Yep.
Right. Just didn't know where to go, so we sat down on a log, and the buck walked 15 yards away.
Yeah.
But I'm not positive, but I mean, I'm trusting what I'm seeing, and I'm not. We had a ton of does during early season and through the summer. So my only explanation is they've moved off to other food sources.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing some. There's Chris was hunting up in my in my ladder stand up on the point there on the side hill, and he had a doe and 2 yippers feeding around in front of him all morning, and then they bedded down. But he was really holding out for a buck,
Yeah.
But I got my spots I go, and I usually see does, and I'm not seeing them. So.
Well, I was listening to a podcast. Well, I don't know if it was the most recent Wired to Hunt or if it's just one that just popped up that I grabbed onto and been listening to the last couple of days. But he had three different guys on to talk about their late season strategy, and one of them was Neil Doherty. And I don't really know Neil, or I've heard the name, but I didn't know much about him. But he does consulting work, property management, stuff like that. He's located somewhere here in New York. I'm not sure.
He's isn't he down Steuben County way?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. He's local.
Is he?
Yeah.
So
relatively, Western New York.
He was talking a lot about, and it made really good sense, that our temperatures have been so high, so high above average, that they're not burning any calories and they have no reason to move.
Right.
And you add hunting pressure, you add, the timing that we're at, you're still seeing a lot of these good bucks are getting shot, but most of them are getting shot because they're out looking for does or on a doe.
They're on does, so you wonder if there isn't a little bit of lockdown going on right now. And the temperatures have been. I told Chris today up at camp, I go, you wait till next weekend. We start getting some overnight temperatures in the 20s and, daytime highs in the 30s, and get a little snow on the ground. There'll be, and I think there's a great acorn crop on the backside of the hill, and I think that they're going to be hitting the acorns,
Yeah.
Because all the crops are up on the north hill, and any of the ag land near our camp, the crops are mostly all off. So
yeah,
I think we got to be hunting those food sources, and of course they don't travel far from them. I think the deer are just laying on the side hills.
Yeah.
We get some cold weather, it's going to change everything. We really haven't had it yet this year.
Well, we had it a little bit.
A very little.
Middle to end of October, and then it.
Well, we had November 19th. We had snow on the ground up there before our opener, and we had a couple inches of snow in Naples, and my cameras blew up with activity.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it warmed back up, and things settled right down. Other than rut activity,
Yeah. I'll tell you what, and I guess this is before Jimmy gets on here and we get actually telling our stories about the bucks that we shot. This has just been a blur of a season. I mean, so much, and obviously having the podcast, we're talking hunting and focusing on hunting all year round now. Not that we weren't before, but now I'm like fully engaged and thinking about it all the time. And season gets here, and life is different for obvious reasons, with having another child and adding that to the mix. And then this second wave of COVID coming, and now it's really impacting close to home. And it's just been a blur. We did all this stuff with Breeding and Radio, and it was all these episodes and putting work in, trying to hunt, doing your 9 to 5, your regular day job, taking care of family stuff. It's just, I can't believe it's already the end of November and tags are filled, and it's like, how the hell?
Yeah. How did we get here? Right.
Yeah. But I think it goes into, part of my, my story with my 2 bucks, and my 2 does really, but my 2 bucks in particular, that it's just, it became very apparent to me beginning of the season that this was not going to be a year where I could be out really putting time in and picking and choosing when I wanted to go. And it just was not going to be that way.
No.
So if and when I had the opportunity, I needed and I more wanted to capitalize than needed. There's need is something that can be, discussed, whether that's actually needed or not, because you can go buy meat at the store if you really need to. But I wanted to have the success this year because of all the effort and the work I've put in scouting and trying to become more proficient at putting the pieces together and actually getting deer on the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you. That's just, you've had obviously a whale of a year with everything on your end, on the personal and professional side with work and everything that goes along with what the world's holding with us right now as far as this virus goes. And it's just crazy. I don't.
Yeah. And there's no getting away, every year I'm like, I can't get off work. And this year, I was praying to God that if there was going to be a shutdown, it would be during the rut, but we made it this long. We got to keep going. But it's, we're super short staffed, and with everything at work, there is no time off,
Yeah.
So all I got's weekends, and can't even get away for an evening hunt,
No.
But I can't complain. All I got is doe tags left, and I'll be happy if I get 1 doe, if I get 2, that'd be great, but we got 3 weekends left, so counting muzzleloader.
Yeah, the way the season falls this year, it's awesome. We got a lot of time, and I'm cautiously optimistic that they might put that late holiday season in this year. We'll see what they do. I was reading the article in New York Outdoor News that that it's been put forth to the decision makers, and we'll see what they do. But that'd be pretty nice. I was looking at the calendar. The reality of me being able to put any extended amount of effort in that late season is pretty slim, but I would just love to. I think at this point, looking at the rest of the season, it's going to be probably just 2 or 3 more days of hunting. I would love more, and maybe I'll get a few more, but I just want to get some snow on the ground and just get out. And I don't have a buck tag to actually kill a buck on a track, but I really want to get out and practice tracking. I spent a ton of time talking to people about that and reading about it, especially over the last few months. And I just really want to put that. We've done it, we do a ton of still hunting, but I just really want to get out there and actually just try to make it happen.
Yeah. I'm hoping for the same thing, and I'll be tracking does though.
Yeah.
Might as well practice on the does, right? Track them.
Yeah. But on the flip side, if I don't need a doe, it'd be fun just to get on tracks and just.
Well, yeah, if you hit a big one, it'd be fun to go on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was looking at the season, it was opening night, opening eve was despite COVID, it was a great time. It was awesome having Connor there and Jeff there, and just luckily the weather. I don't know if I ever remember us having like a bonfire outside or campfire, and everybody being around the campfire. It was a beautiful night.
Yeah.
And and it was nice enough weather that you could camp out, and keep your distance there. But all in all, it was great, with Bob being up there and with your friends being up there, and those boys really fit in nice, and everybody enjoyed seeing them and meeting them, and good experience. I hope they enjoyed that, you know, and I'd get with both of them and you know, welcome them back anytime here before season's out. You know, they're always welcome to come up.
Yeah. I mean, this year it's just being such an irregular year. I mean, you touched on it. Opening night, you know, we were kind of having a little bit of, my wife has been having a really rough time at work with COVID. It's been going through, she works in a hospital, and it's been going through the hospital, and not just with patients, but with, you know, coworkers. And so she's been getting tested pretty frequently with some concern. And, you know, not that we've seen any symptoms or anything, but then right before opening day, been Wednesday before opening day, the woman who runs our daycare, her sister tested positive. So, I mean, then it's getting real close to home.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a small community where I live. There's not a lot of people. So everybody's very close knit, and, you know, kids are staying over here and hanging out over there, and people are interacting. And so that, you know, Sarah, you know, she's messaging me middle of the week, and, you know, you're gearing up for opening weekend, and I got friends coming, you're trying to plan all this stuff out. And, you know, she's messaging me saying, you know, you need to be looking at changing your plans. And I was just a ball of stress. I mean, I know my friends, you know, Brian and Dallas, and anybody I was talking to, Danny, I was just snappy. I probably was to you too. I was just stressed out. I'm like, this is what I look forward to every year. I'm going hunting. I'm not going to be in a, you know, in a big you know, I'm not like in a store or a stadium or a school, you know, a classroom, whatever. I'm like getting away from people. But, you know, understanding and respecting her, you know, where we're coming from and our perspective, and maybe that we've been exposed and don't know it yet, or maybe we're asymptomatic, you know, the handling of that, the decision was made. You know, I came home and I watch her pull in the driveway. I'm like, oh God, I'm like, this isn't going to be good, you know? And she's like, you're not going to like what I got to say. I'm like, well, what do you got? She's like, well, I don't think you should stay in the cabin. And I'm like, well, can I give you my recommendation? She's like, sure. I was like, how about I sleep in a tent? She's like, that's fine. I'm like, okay. I'm like, not a problem. I'll take a tent. So yeah, you know, we got up there on Friday afternoon, and I pitched my tent and had a bonfire and hung out outside and didn't go in the cabin at all. And, you know, it kind of sucked not to be in there and hanging out with you guys much, but, you know, the most of us young guys just hung out by the fire, and we did a podcast. And it was a perfect night. I mean, it was 38, 40 degrees with a nice big bonfire. Wind was blowing the smoke away. So you're just standing out there enjoying it. It was awesome. And those guys, you know, Connor and Jeff being their first experience at a deer camp, you know, they both just raved about it. You know, they were messaging me personally the days following, you know, how much they enjoyed that, and how much it just kind of, it's a different perspective. And somebody like Connor, who he has hunted for 4 or 5 years now, but that was something he had never experienced, was that. And I've been wanting to get those guys up there, especially Connor, just to get a taste of what that is at deer camp. You know, that's nice the experience. What happens opening day is almost never the best day of hunting of the season. It's just, that's what you're living for, is for everybody rendezvousing and showing up at camp. And Audi, you know, Connor driving his Audi up the logging road, which is the first time. I didn't get a picture of that. What an idiot.
Oh, why no? Why didn't we get that?
I don't know.
And Joey Noto stopped up yesterday, and he's got a 3/4 ton Chevy 4-wheel drive, like crew cab. It's lifted. It's got nice tires on it, you know.
Yeah.
He came bahan up the hill, and he gets out of the truck, and after our hellos, he's like, he turns around and he points back at the road and down the hill. He's like, you said a guy drove an Audi up that road? Like, oh, yeah, it was sitting right where your truck is.
That's
he
funny.
drove right up there and parked. He goes, I cannot believe it. I swear to God.
Yeah.
I said, that car walked right up here.
Yep.
Yeah,
Did you guys end up going over there opening night?
we did. It was Mike and Adam and I were the only ones there at camp.
Yeah.
And, you know, we went over and I'm telling you, we had a great time, as we always do. But, you know, Corey was not able to make it, and Frankie Mueller didn't make it. You know, and our group was smaller and their group was relatively small. So, you know, it was some of us sitting in the kitchen. Everybody was really, you know, spaced out. had great food. We didn't stay real long, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
But it had the best time. It was awesome.
Yeah. And
I hated to not go because I just love, like, one time a year we all, you got Joe, you got his boys, you got their boys and girls, so it's like our deer camp, on opening eve, when it's multi-generational, and it's just nice getting the whole gang together and everybody kind of catching up, and
yeah,
it was very nice.
yeah, that's a cool, it's a great tradition there. And gosh, just let's get this freaking shit behind us so we can,
I know,
somewhat get back to normal on it,
I think Jimmy's waiting to jump in with us here.
Yeah, I just see him in the waiting room.
Here he comes.
Oh, there's the
Oh,
afro.
look at that backdrop. Jim, you are something. Is that your real hair? Hello?
He can't hear us.
Can't hear anybody.
Yeah.
Hello?
We can hear you, Jimbo. That is his real hair, Dad. Yes.
He must have got it done today.
There
He's-
you go.
Looks like Fabio.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You need to get yourself a yarmulke is what you need.
Yeah, let's knock it out of hand.
I was talking.
He's got enough hair for all three of us, Bill.
I know.
Somebody's got to keep rocking it.
I was talking to Aaron Morrow a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Hey man, you got to tell Jimmy thanks for keep wearing that Matthews shirt and all these random pictures that pop up." That picture that they use in the New York Outdoor News a couple months ago when they had you, like, that's an old ass picture of you, but you're wearing your Matthews shirt.
I was?
Yeah, I think that's what he was talking about.
Well, every time we cut, I wear this shit to cutting because I have a hoodie and long sleeve.
Right.
I just wear whatever t-shirt, but they're the only long sleeve that I own. So when we go to cut, I wear the hoodie and the long sleeve, and then it's funny because Wes is there every time we cut. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
he took a picture of me on the tailgate with my first buck, and I was like, "Take that back and show it to the boys."
Yeah. So Jimbo, we've pretty much just been just bullshitting and talking, kind of waiting for you to get on here to actually get into telling our stories about our opening weeks. So I don't know if you have anything to add from your perspective as we led up to opening day, kind of what your season has been and all that good stuff.
Well, it's been really good, which is kind of funny because it's the least amount of time that I've ever spent in the woods. So the fact that I haven't spent near as much time as I normally do, but yet I've been just as successful or more successful than I normally am, seems to be weird. And I don't know if that's just you try to make more of the time you got or what, but I'm not. Normally you go to camp and you drink too much and you wander out in the woods in the morning. And like, I'm showing up ready to go before these guys are in the morning now because I'm not staying at camp. But it sucks that we're missing that part of this season. But when it comes down to it, I'm out there to put meat in the freezer, and I'm still having incredible luck not just being there. So hopefully next year everything's back to normal. But I was talking to Martha earlier. I'm like, the only thing that I have to complain about this season is that we do not have, it hasn't been a regular season. It just hasn't felt normal. And I think everybody can relate to that in their own way, shape, or form. But
yeah, I think from a harvest standpoint, we've done outstanding.
Probably because there's a lot less alcohol being drank.
Yeah, maybe, everybody's just like, more hardcore hunting, but that being said, one of the absolute best parts of the deer season is the time we all spend together and, up at camp and cooking out and having dinner after a day of hunting or before a day of hunting. And so that piece of it, that's what's missing this year. It's just such a drastic change,
Yeah.
But it has been very fruitful. We cannot complain,
No, I mean, today I measured up that buck that I got with my gun, and both bucks I shot are between 125 and 130. I'm sure if you picked them more with a fine tooth comb, they'd be 125-ish, but
yeah,
the way I whipped them out quick and just measured them, this one scored 132. But
Wow.
I'm sure with the way I measured, I'm sure there's something that I overdid or whatever. But
Bottom line is two tremendous bucks.
yeah,
Yeah, good
yep,
for you.
no complaints there.
That's right.
Oh, and leading up to opening week, I was just, making Billy feel comfortable and making him think that, I could tell I had him sweating a little. He was feeling it. He was down one. And then he shot that buck open in the morning. He's like, oh, 4-4. It's the big 4-4. And then he shot the doe, and he was like, oh, look at me, 5-4.
No. It was 3-3, and then I shot the
Right.
doe, and it was 4-3.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're correct. What is it now?
it's 5-4.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, my Facebook memories told me we've been here before.
Yeah.
When that memory I had that popped up today was 7 years ago, and apparently that's when I decided to start shooting more deer.
Yeah.
Because I was it was Thanksgiving Day at Howlett's, and I shot 2 does, so I was up 5-4, and yeah, that's where I think I ended that year. So hopefully I'm not done where I'm sitting today.
That's right.
You better hope not, because I ain't.
No.
Yeah, see what happens. We got a long way to go yet. We got a few more weekends.
Yep. So first, before we get going on our buck kill stories, is one of you guys have your cell phone near your microphone or near the computer or something? Because I'm getting feedback.
How about now?
I'm still getting a little bit of feedback. That's better. That's better. I don't know if it was probably Dad. We'll blame it on Dad.
I have mine
That's
here,
fine.
but I mean it's not on Zoom or anything.
Whatever. Yeah.
It's right here, but it's
Yeah,
not.
It's not interfering with.
I
what
mean,
we're
I'll
doing.
shut it off if you want.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it, Dad.
How do you shut off an iPhone?
You throw it against the wall. I think you got cement brick around there.
Just give her a wing.
I'm sure you're due for an upgrade.
So far, I've taken a picture of my screen.
Yeah, we started having
You
issues
can
when
just set it like arms reach away. You should be fine.
just pretend you're social distancing from your phone.
Yeah.
I put it in the desk drawer.
There you go. So how do you want to run through this? You want to run through the chronological order of our killing?
Sure.
Or do you want to do it by which one he's going to tell the longest story first?
Well, we all know that's you, so.
Yeah, mine's pretty. This one's pretty quick.
Oh, mine's pretty quick too. So we'll start with mine because we'll go in a chronological order. So if anybody who's listening to this, hopefully you listened to the podcast we did that posted last week where we talked about what I was standing around the bonfire opening night, and we were kind of chatting through what the game plan looked like for opening day, and the property I was hunting public land with my buddy Connor and Jeff, and both of their first opening days hunting together with me, first time on public land. This is a piece of property I've been hunting for the last couple of years on opening day, so I had a pretty good idea what to expect, movement wise and pressure wise. So I set us up based on where I expected the deer to go with the pressure. This is the same property I shot my buck off with my bow, and I've spent a lot of time on this piece over the last year, especially, scouting and trying to put all the pieces together. But I haven't really had opportunity until I did with my bow to actually, get a shot opportunity to buck and put one on the ground. So fast forward opening morning, Connor and Jeff and I, we were at the trailhead at 5:30, and it's a pretty good hike. It's straight uphill for quite, about a mile, a little over a mile. I don't know exactly what it is. I know it's at least a mile to get to the very top. So we'll just leave it at that. So we're humping up the hill, and we're about halfway up, and we come up on somebody with a headlamp in the trail in front of us, and he's like waving us to like slow down, and he's got his headlamp and my headlamp's on him, and he's got his hands up in the air, and he's like big buck, and he's pointing right over here, and so we kind of as quietly as we can, we walk up to him and we're chatting, and he's a guy that owns some private property that borders this, and younger guy. I got his name, and so we chatted with him for like a minute, and everybody was kind of catching their breath. We were huffing and puffing pretty good, and we started humping from there, and we get all the way up to the top, and you guys both know like the quote unquote field we call it.
Yeah.
So we're at the top of the field, and we're sitting there, and Connor's it's me, Jeff, Connor. Connor gets to me, and Connor was carrying he stopped at the gas station to buy coffee. He was carrying a coffee cup, and he's got his down jacket on, like, and this is a freaking hike, and it was like 40 degrees out. It wasn't that cold. And
No.
he is pouring sweat. And we stop, and we're standing there, and it's at this point it's like 6:10. We made pretty good time getting up the hill, and he goes, shit, I lost my knit hat, my orange hat. I got to go back and get it. So he's like, hold my stuff. So he gives Jeff his gun, and we're standing there, and he just takes off running down the hill. So he ended up running like all the way back down to almost about where the cabin is.
Oh my God.
And he found his hat, and he comes running back up, and I'm just like, Judas Priest. I'm like, what a freaking mess. And I'm like, whatever. It's opening day. There's going to be pressure. Like, who cares, So we end up splitting off. And so I've been telling Connor, we've been messaging as a group, and I've sent him Onyx waypoints, and because Connor's using Onyx, so I've marked stuff on Onyx so he could get to this spot. I set up 2 ground blinds for him. The week prior, I went up there and built ground blinds, like had it all ready to go. And I've been trying to, and I could tell when I was talking to him that he was just in one ear out the other. Like the night before, we're standing around the fire, and he's just like, yeah, I shot a 72 golfing today. He wasn't thinking at all. So the 3 of us go, and Jonesy heads off to his climber, and I'm taking Connor. I get him to the old logging road that's overgrown a little bit. I'm like, just go right here. And I'm looking on the map. I go to this property corner, and there's going to be a steep crossing. You're going to cross this little creek, and then you're going to go right on the other side, and there's a ground blind. You'll see a thumbtack in the tree that you shine your headlamp. It's right there. He's like, all right, ready to go. So I drop him off. I go down the hill to my spot, and I'm on the other side of this deep ravine. He's on the other side, so we would ideally be able to catch anything that's getting pushed down towards the ravine. And it's sun's starting to come up. I get settled into my spot, didn't jump any deer, so I was pretty optimistic about that. And it's about like 7:40, 7:45, and I hear there was a bunch of shooting going on the neighboring properties, and I'm getting excited because I'm like, this is good. Like, I want shooting happening where it is, because that's what I was anticipating the deer to come from. And I hear something coming up from below, from the bottom of that deep ravine, and I look down, and it's a great big coyote. It was beautiful coyote, and it comes running right below me on the bench. And so I'm in a spot where I didn't get up in a tree. I was planning on hunting from the ground until the sun came up and things kind of worked itself out, and then I was going to figure out if I needed to go somewhere or not. So I'm sitting there, and I hear this coyote. I see it, and I sit down against a tree, and I pull my gun up, and I'm on the coyote. Safety's off. And then I'm like, whoa, Bill. I'm like, relax. It's opening day. You don't need to freaking be shooting your gun at 7:45, 7:50 at a coyote in a spot that you anticipate to be like a getaway spot. And so the coyote goes away. I text those guys, say, hey, big coyote coming to you. And I stand up, and I got a big pine tree to my back. And to my back, I'm right at the top of this ridge that goes down. And I can see the whole flat of the ridge in the hemlocks. So anything that's coming from the hardwoods down into the hemlocks, I'm going to see them. And there's a lot of historical buck sign through here. And I've just, Dad, you and I have walked through there. I don't know if you've been down in there, Jimmy, but
That's a great spot.
It's just an area that I've been trying to figure out how the hell to hunt it. And I really think that this might be the way to do it, is just to do it from the ground, because you get up in a tree and you just reduce so much of your visibility there. So right in this one spot, like, I was walking around there the week before when I went up, did a quick speed hike to just do some quick scouting, grab cameras, build those blinds. And I went to the spot where I was going to set up, and I was trying to figure out, like, what tree could I get up in? Where should I be? And I just kept walking and just trying to see my sight lines. And I found this spot that's not really that ideal as far as cover wise, but I'm just in a spot where I can stand with a couple big pine trees or cedars, whatever they are. I can stand there, and have some breakup, but I can see down the hill real well, and I can see all the way on the top of this flat real well. So I ended up parking it in that spot. So I had turned around. I stood up after the coyote went by. I turned around, and it couldn't have been 5 minutes later. I don't know if I heard a branch snap or if I caught something moving coming down out of the hardwoods into the hemlocks, right on this little, right where all these buck rubs come down in that I've seen in past years. And I saw when I was doing my quick scout there the week before. So I see this dark body, and I pull my gun up, and I'm looking, I'm guessing there's going to be horns. So I see his right side, and so I'm safety's off. I'm ready. And he steps out in front of the tree, and he stops, and I'm looking at his left side, and he's looking downhill, and I'm like, man, it's just really not. He doesn't have real tall tines. He's width. He's not tall as far as tine wise. And so I wasn't going to shoot, and he's standing there facing downhill, and he just kind of turns and starts this almost like he wants to go uphill, or if he was going to, I don't know what he was going to do. He didn't have just time to end up doing anything. So he turns, and I see him from behind. I see how wide he is, and it just, like, in my head, it just clicks. I'm like, that's the buck I had on camera on Sunday, the 15th of November. And I just threw the camera up, and I put it on this spot. And the second deer I got in there was this buck I shot. And as soon as it just like clicked in my head, I'm like, that's the wide one. And as soon as he came into the next picture, he was slightly quartering away, and I put it right on the top of it, right on his shoulder, and I shot, and he just dumped. I mean, just immediately dumped right there. And the way he was, I really couldn't see real well, but I thought I could see his body. So I'm like kind of looking up, kind of going around the tree, trying to figure out if it's him or not. And my phone starts going off. Connor and Jeff are texting me, and I pull my binoculars up, and I'm looking. I'm like, sure as shit. I'm like, that's his back. I'm like, he didn't go anywhere. He dropped right there. So I was ecstatic, but in my head, I made that decision so quickly. I was like, that's the buck I had seen. But then you pull the trigger, and you're like, holy shit, what did I just shoot? I'm like, it's not even 8 o'clock on opening morning, and I'm not even really 100% sure what I just shot. It just probably happened in a matter of 30 seconds, seeing him making a decision, finding the window to shoot him, and making the shot. It happened super quick. So I ended up waiting maybe 15, 20 minutes, and I sat back down, and I was pretty pumped up, and I was shaking bad. Like, it was not that cold out. My hands were frozen, and I got the adrenaline shaking, and I'm sitting there, and so I stand up, and I'm going to go check him out. So I kind of sneaking over there, and I come up, and immediately when I saw him on the ground, I knew that it was for sure the buck. And I was super pleased. That's a deer that I would, especially on public land, I would shoot any day, but I'd have a real hard time letting that buck walk by me any day. So I was super pleased when I walk up on him. I was like, hell yeah, like, that's an awesome buck. And this is something, you guys know me. I've been really seeking the adventure a lot over the last few years, like me going and doing some of the stuff on public land or backpacking in and doing it. Maybe I'm not going to have the luck of shooting the quality of deer that we might get at camp or at the farm, but it's like the adventure I'm chasing, because I just really enjoy getting off the beaten path and doing something difficult.
Yeah, it's the experience, right?
Yeah. So I was just super pleased. So then those guys end up coming down to me, Connor and Jeff, and they worked their way over about 45 minutes later, and I was just kind of sitting there. It was actually really nice. I had about 15, 20 minutes where I almost like never do this, because you're always in a rush, and this is so early in the morning. I got the whole day to hunt. I'm not supposed to be anywhere. I just sat down and just kind of took the whole moment in. I'm just in a beautiful spot, an area I've been trying to figure out for 3 years now, and just felt really good about that whole hunt coming together. And then I was excited because I had been talking about quartering a deer out and packing it out of here. And every deer I've shot up in there, all the does I've shot, I've dragged out, and my archery buck I dragged out too, because I shot them at, right at the end of legal shooting light, and just wanted to get out of the woods more than anything. So I was like, yeah, I have all day, so I'm going to take my time. And Jeff and Connor would come down to me, and they're hanging around. We take some pictures, and they're all pumped up, and gunshots are going off. And, I'm like, well, let's get started. Let's get this thing quartered up. And they're like, well, how long is that going to take? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if the three of us are working on it, it could take about 45 minutes or an hour, because I've never done it on my own. I've always had 3 or 4 other guys with me to do it. So I'm like, this is going to take a little while. And they're like, well, can we go hunt? I'm like, yeah, have at it. I'm like, get out there and tear it up. I don't care. I got all the time in the world. So I start quartering up my deer, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed doing it on my own because I was very slow and methodical about it. It ended up taking me like probably about 3 hours to do it, but I just took my time. I was in no rush, and I had my gun laying on the ground next to me. And if I heard something, I would just, put my knife down and grab my gun and kind of stand up and just take a peek around, see what was going on. A lot of it was squirrels, but at about 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm working on one side of the deer. I'd already gotten the one side done. I'm working on the other, and I hear something coming, and this actually sounds like deer coming from above me. And so I just grabbed my gun. I'm already on my one knee. I just grabbed my gun and dropped my knife, and these 2 deer come right into the wide open hardwoods right in front of me, and probably 60, 70 yards. I didn't yardage it, but with the rifle, I didn't think twice, what the distance was.
Yeah.
And the first deer stopped, and it looked big, but it looked like I was like, man, it's got to be a button buck. It looked like a large head, and I'm like, it's got to be a button buck, So I pull my scope up, and it was on 4 power, so I turn it up to 9 max power on my scope, and I put it right on its head, and I'm like, there's no buttons. I'm like, that looks like a really good sized doe. So I just lowered it down to the shoulder and shot and dropped that deer right in its tracks too. It was high. It was a high shot, but it was top of both lungs and just dropped it right there. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, tagged out. That was my last doe tag for SZN. So I was like, that's fantastic. I was like, I guess I'm done, and I have a lot of work to do. So yeah, it was.
That was a huge doe too.
I've
never seen such a big head on a doe.
I know. And it was I think a bigger body than my buck. Now I shouldn't say that. It's hard to tell. I quartered my buck, so I have no idea. I got more meat out of the buck than I did the doe, so I guess that's a good measure. She was huge. I never put a scale to her, but one of the biggest does I've ever shot. And
I couldn't believe it. She was very big.
I felt it when I was dragging it, because I did drag her out, and that was not fun on dry ground. That was not fun at all.
Dragged the hair right off of the right side.
I did. There was
had in your truck, and there was nothing.
There was a lot of hair.
Bare skin.
It was bizarre. I got back to the road, and I'm like, we loaded up in the truck, and it flips over on the other side. And I'm like, oh shit! Like, I'm glad it didn't get through. It just rubbed the hair off. It got down to the deer skin.
Yeah, that's a long drag when you drag it long enough that all the hair comes off.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just finish kind of my story and see if you guys have any questions or anything on that. But so I ended up doing my whole buck in one trip, and I left. I got done quartering my buck. I left the doe, and I just got done with the buck. Did everything I needed to do there. I hung up all the meat in the trees to kind of let air get to it, and I go up. I gut the doe, take care of her, tag it, prop it open, kind of put it up on a stump so that it kind of was opened up a little bit and breathing, get that meat cooling down. And I go back down, and I'm like, I don't want to be making multiple trips here. I'm like, I'm going to try to get this. I've kind of always, just being the manly man that I am. I've just always, I've always wanted to just pack my whole deer out on my own. So I'm like, well, let's give it a shot. So, I have my backpacking, my Kafaru backpack, and my striker. I got the striker bag on there. It's got a real nice meat shelf, and I've wanted to test the limits of this bag because it's a fairly small bag, but it's got a nice meat shelf in it. So I was just curious, what I could do and how comfortable it would be. And, I'm guessing. So I added up all the meat when I got home, and I weighed everything in the game bags to see how much it was. It was about, I got the notepad over there. I think it was like 55 pounds of 55 pounds, including the bone in. Maybe it was 55 pounds. So with the pack and the gear, so it was probably a 65 or 70 pounds because I had my saddle and my platform, my sticks, everything on there, and my food and all my clothes, everything. I had my whole getup and the head, which the head was probably 4 or 5 pounds. I don't know, but
yeah.
so I got the whole pack strapped down, and I, you're not picking that up and putting it on your back. So I sit down on the ground and strap it on, and I roll over and, stand up, and I'm like, all right, that's heavy, but let's go. So that was about like 2:00. I left the spot, and I start to hike down, and I get almost to the bottom of the hill, and my phone goes off. It's Connor, and he had left to go home. He was gonna go home and make some brownie points so he could hunt Sunday, and he decided to do a detour apparently to his camp on his camp's right over the hill. So he stopped by over there, and he ended up shooting a doe. And so he's all fired up. He's like, I shot a doe. I can't believe it. He goes, I got her right here. And he's like, I could tell he was kind of wondering if I'd come over and help or what I was doing. And 100% I wanted to go help him. But that just complicated things a little bit because I still had my doe at the top of the hill, and it's going on 3:00, and it's a 40-minute walk back up the hill, and at least a 40-minute drag, and that's if you're really humping. So I rip over to 10-minute drive. I rip over to Connor's. Well, I get to the parking spot. I hang all the meat up because I needed the meat to cool. So I hung up all the meat, and I'm like, I hope to God somebody doesn't mess with it. I hung it in the trees around the parking spot. And I rip over to Connor's, get there. It's like 3:10, go up, help him gut his deer. He hit it back a little bit, so there was some guts. So we had to wash it out. So we get down there, get back to his cabin, wash it out, throw it up on the back of his Audi, wash the damn thing. The Audi's like covered in blood. He's like, it's a daily runner, I don't really care about it. And so I jump back in the truck. It's 3:45. Get back there. I'm 4:00. I'm on the trail again, and I'm back up to the top of the hill at 4:40, and I'm hooked onto my doe and headed out at 4:45, and I ended up getting back to the truck at 5:25, 5:30, and I was like, holy shit, that's a long ass day. I mean, up and down that hill 3 times, hauling that meat, dragging a deer, but it was an opening day I'll never forget. And that was exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for that adventure and for that.
Yeah, you had an adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Type 2.
Now, if you were really a manly man, you'd have loaded that backpack on and then hooked the doe to the backpack and taken it all down in one trip.
Crossed my mind, but
that's what I would have done.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right
I
now.
had thrown both deer whole right over my shoulders and walked them out.
You got Dad's broad shoulders. I've got Mom's slinky little slinky frame. Dainty.
Oh, you did good. That was a day's work right there, my friend.
Yep. So that was my opening day.
So where you were set up when you and I were up there snowshoeing a couple years ago, there was a remnants of an old tree stand right on the edge of the hemlocks. Were you due north of that, down on that finger?
Yep. So when you drop down onto that finger, there's a little there's like a little void of trees. It's like
it just opens up
10 or 15 yard circle. That's just there's nothing. There's no trees.
Yeah, I think we put a camera in there, didn't we?
We put a camera right on the edge of that. Well, do you know where we put the trail camera? We put 2 trail cameras up that day. Yep. One was to the south of that old tree stand, and one was to the north, wrapping around. Well, northwest, wrapping around that spot there. And where I shot that buck was 10 yards from where that camera was.
Yeah,
he was, and it was very, very interesting where he dropped. There was literally 20 buck rubs around.
Well, there was buck rubs there a couple of years ago when you and I were up in there because we found that spot, and I said, "Boy, this is a good spot where they'll come in off those hardwoods and try and get into the side hill bedding there." Yep.
And that's one of the things that I've learned so much hunting that property alone because I have no preconceived understanding and I've learned so much just by looking at sign and putting pieces together. And when I hike, I love to hike with the sign, whether it's following deer trails or following rub lines. And I have my tracker on my app to see where I'm going. So it overlays on the map. And
Yeah.
I start putting the pieces together, and that's really what I've done on this property is I've just, I by no means am I shooting. I mean, I've got maybe 2.5-year-old bucks. If maybe the one I shot with my gun's 3. We'll find out. But it's like it's not a matter. I'm trying to become more proficient in reading and identifying sign and understanding how deer are moving through a property, and like that's what I came away from that hunt with was just like hell yeah,
Yeah.
like I wanted to. I'm figuring it out. I don't have a record book buck on the wall to show for it, but I've got meat in the freezer and successful hunt to
Well,
feel
you
good
hunted
about.
it twice this year, right?
Yeah, I hunted it twice and I shot 3 deer.
Yeah. So I'd say you're figuring it out pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the allure of going to a place like that and having to figure that out. Like, we go to our camp and just do like we know where the deer move. We know where the escape routes are. It's a matter like, and Jimmy's always figured it out, and he's done a really good job on top of the South Hill there, figuring out where they are and moving and adjusting. But, so many times after a lifetime on the same mountain, you just do the same thing year after year, And of course, that being said, there's not much different to do. We've done it all, we've had stands everywhere there. So, my opening day spot this year, did you want me to go into that?
Sure. Do you have anything, Jim?
Well, it's just funny how you're talking about. You kind of have it figured out, but you also hear a bunch of different stuff. Guys saying sometimes when your tree stands in one spot long enough, they kind of figure you out. You got to move it, even if it's just 50, 60 yards.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that this year with my property line stand. I'm like, this shit just ain't the same. I'm like, I know there's deer in here. Maybe if I move just a little bit, I'll throw them a curveball. And I moved that stand about 75 yards and got in it opening afternoon. And the fucking deer walked right by my stand where it was. And I couldn't get a shot at him. So, yeah, work on that theory.
Good point. Well, so many times it's and I always say that, right? I hunt geographic features, and that's, years ago, I don't even know how long ago it was, probably 20 years ago or something. I picked out this spot, it was a little bit of a bench up there on the side hill above the cabin, about halfway up the hill. And I started hunting with my climber up there. And I think I hunted up there 7 or 8 years. And every single year on opening day, I killed a decent buck up there. And Bob had kind of taken that spot over, Bob Madigan. And so he had a ladder stand we put up there for him years ago. And that's when I shifted and went and got a new opening day spot back in the Hemlock, which I never really connected that well back there. Saw a ton of deer, but just never chose to shoot until last year. But I really wanted to get back to that spot because I really enjoy that spot. And so I got a new ladder stand, and I put it, there was 1 year that I had a ladder stand up there for my dad, and a big basswood. If the basswood trees they tend to grow really big, and then they'll have, like they'll have like 4-inch saplings like growing around out of the stump. And it really kind of tucks you right in there. Because you're in the stand against a big tree, but I got these small sucker shoots that come up, have grown into small trees, kind of shelter you or hide you in there. They give you something to rest your gun on. I just love setting up on a basswood like that. And I had Dad set up there years ago, and so I wanted to put it right back in the same spot where Dad was, and so I put it back in that tree, and then I had put a new stand in there and got it all set up, and it's amazing how much that opened up compared to what it was years ago. It used to be so thick up in there. It's opened up a lot. But I also had a trail cam that you boys got me, a cell cam, and I put that in there. And I'd been watching that, and I had like pretty good steady buck activity. And that's actually, I don't know, Jimmy, 150 yards above that ridge line that you shot your buck at. I won't say his name for the fear of offending anybody. But so so it's kind of in that area, and we did the clear cut. So I'm kind of right off the south end of the clear cut. So just a ton of activity down there.
It was really nice how tight-lipped you kept all that information off your cell camera.
Yeah. You didn't share a damn thing.
No, I didn't want to bother you. You had so many pictures and cameras you were maintaining. I didn't want to add to it.
We were always sharing nice pictures of bucks and updates, and nothing from Dad. I figured the camera was dead.
No, I was doing quite well. So it was funny though. I sat in there and I obviously got in on stand with a high level of confidence, just given historically, again, the terrain, the geographic features, and the fact that the deer tend to work that side hill quite a bit. And never saw a darn thing all morning. I think it was probably 20 minutes after you took your buck. Adam shot a buck. He was down hunting kind of above the camper, the old camper spot there. And so I heard him shoot. He had a nice buck down. He shot 5 and 20. And so he said he was all set on stand. So I stayed up there, but I never saw a darn thing all morning. And Bob was there. I don't think he hunted last year, Bob Madigan, who was, Dad's best friend. And so, 85 years old, and he was up there hunting, and I wanted to go back and have lunch with Bob. So I was going to go back and warm up some venison stew and stuff. So I was leaving at 11, had not seen a deer yet, could not believe it. But I'm like, at 11 o'clock, I'm out of here. I'll still hunt my way down and warm up some stew. And then it got to be 11 o'clock, and I was thinking of what MRK says, when you're ready to pack it up and you're done fishing, he's like, just one more, just give a little more. So I'm like, all right, I'll stay till 11:15, see if anything happens then. So we got to be 11:15, and I'm like, all right, I got to get down. So I start, again, real careful scan of everything around before I start packing up, and I just caught the movement of something moving up on the point towards where we used to have that baby grand Billy up in those beach. And so I got the binoculars, I'm looking, and I saw I could tell it was a head of a deer moving back and forth. And this whole thing went on for like 35 minutes. But long story short, that deer, I could tell it was very slowly moving across the hill. It was going to either bed or feed down to me or come across the side hill in front of me. And then as I stared up there, I saw like movement where another deer popped out. And I think it was right where that logging road hangs a left as a switchback there. Mm-hmm. And they were popping off on that switchback. Yep. And then one stopped and stood there, and I was looking with the binoculars. I could see it was a small buck. I don't know, a little 4-point, 6-point or something. I'm like, well, I'm not shooting that. So I figured it was like some does and maybe that little buck. So I put my gun down and got it on my lap, and I'm just watching. And they get into the thick beach there above me and to the right. And then I thought I was hearing things, but I start hearing horns hitting and fighting. And I'm like, is that what I think it is? I'm listening, then I hear it again. So this goes on and on. Then you never hear any crashing because, it was just damp enough that you would have thought you would have heard them crashing around up on the hill, but you didn't. And then they kept working across and ended up being, long story short, there was 4 bucks and a doe. And there was the biggest buck, and I don't know because I didn't get him, but I believe there was a bigger one. I shot the second biggest one. And this went on for so long, and I was just like locked on him. I was frozen. I was cold at 11. So I really underdressed, and I was really cold. That north wind cutting across me, and my eyes, I've never had this happen. My eyes were watering. It's bad enough where I had to take my sleeves and wipe my eyes so I could see through the scope. Everything was blurry. And so I had this buck that I figured was the biggest one. The doe had fed downhill. She came out straight above me, I don't know, probably 80 yards or so. And then she started feeding downhill and to my right. So now she's at like 10 o'clock. I got a due north wind. And I'm like, if she goes another 20 yards, she's going to get my wind. And I couldn't believe the bucks hadn't followed her right down. Because when she started through that open woods, I'm like, they all follow down through there. I just take my pick of the biggest one, and I got this sewed up, But they stayed up there, and she came down. And then this buck steps out in front of this big, huge maple tree, and there was some brush there, and I got the crosshairs on. I'm like, that's the big one. I'm shooting that one. It had a really light-colored rack. And so I'm like, when he steps out, I'm gonna shoot him. So I'm aiming, and I have an adjustable shooting rail on this ladder stand. And the first thing I did in the morning when I got set up was I raised it up, but I didn't raise it all the way up. And I wish the heck I had, because there was like no way to get down low enough to use the rail to shoot off of. So that, and I didn't dare stand up because that doe was right there. So long story short, I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to just go kind of freehand here. And, but that buck did not step out. I got the safety off and I got the crosshairs on him. And then he starts to move. I think he's going to come out, and he turns around and he goes crashing back into the beach. And I can just pick out a little bit what's going on, that they're all the bucks start thrashing around again and fighting. And then I lose track of where they all went. But I know they're in there somewhere because I'll see when they come out. And then I look back up to that maple, and there's a buck standing there like a statue right in front of that maple, a different buck. So I pull up and I look at that one, and I can see looks like there's good tines on him, nice dark rack. And there's a 7-point. It was a nice 8-point that had a broke off brow tine on the right side that I've been seeing up there regular. And I figured that was him. And so I said, if he steps out, I'm going to take him. Because meanwhile, I'm watching the doe to my left, and she's getting in the danger zone there. So I'm like, I got to make this happen, or I'm going to come out of this with nothing. So
Should have shot her and then worried about the rest of them.
Yeah.
I should have. I never thought of that, Jim. I never thought of that. So
because they were still going to try to breed her.
Yeah.
Probably, right?
Yeah.
So he steps out, and I let him have it. And I'm using a new gun it's not a new gun. It's an old gun that a guy gave me. And so I got that gun set up with a scope, and I sighted it in. And it's the only gun I've ever, I put a pie plate out at like 75 yards after I sighted it in, and I aimed at the nail. I just took a 16-penny nail and drove it into a tree, and I shot at the nail and hit the nail, and the whole pie plate grenaded, and it was the coolest damn thing. But I'm like, this gun's a tack driver. So anyways, long story short, I shoot that deer right through the heart. So that was nice. But he comes running down the hill right to where the doe was. And when he got down that far, and he was still up, but it looked like he was carrying his right leg, like I got busted his shoulder. And I'm like, I better put another one in him, And so I was about to shoot, and he took a right turn and started up the hill. And then all the other bucks were right with him, like they were chasing him. So all 4 bucks are there, and I couldn't do any shooting. But then all of a sudden he started like stumbling backwards, and it looked like he flipped over, but I wasn't sure, and all the deer ran off. So long story short, he did flip over. He was laying there dead, and it was a beautiful shot. But I got to tell you what, you talked about having the shakes on yours, and yours was a 30-second ordeal.
Yeah.
Mine was a 30-minute ordeal. And I got to tell you, in all my years of deer hunting, I've never had that happen where in the gun season, I had like 4 bucks fighting, over a doe, right in front of me, but they're in the thicket there, and here in the antlers clashing. I've never had that happen. And
that's pretty awesome.
So it was awesome. And between being cold and then the adrenaline dump, I mean, I'm telling you, I was shaking. I called Jimmy, and I couldn't even hardly hold the phone still to my ear to talk to him. I was shaking.
Sounded like you just ran a damn marathon.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So it was very exciting. It was a great hunt, and my spot paid off. It did not let me down. So that was, and it was a good buck, probably the best buck I've shot in a few years.
You're lucky I passed him at 15 yards,
Yes,
7
thank
o'clock
you.
in the morning.
Yeah.
We'll call it even for Christmas. You don't owe me anything.
Right. That's fine.
So that's my story.
I couldn't believe that when I called you. I called you probably around like 12:30, 1 o'clock just to check in with you and let you know about what was going on with me. And you're like, oh yeah, I shot a buck. I'm like, what? Because that was, I mean, it was a busy morning. I shot mine. Adam shot his right after. And then you ended up shooting yours.
Jimmy passed on all of them, probably passed on 5 and 20 before it went to Adam.
I did. Well, I didn't technically pass on him. I saw him, but I never had a good shot at him. But I did watch him go down the hill, and then Adam shoot about 20 minutes later.
Yep.
And then when he sent me the picture, I was like, yep, that was a deer I watched go down the hill.
Yeah.
I will tell you, though, that every deer that we've taken, it's really cool. We had so many cameras, and we had such a good inventory of the bucks. up there this year that like every buck that we've taken, we're like, yep, I know that buck, you know?
Yeah. And
So-
that's not normal. We typically don't have that. You know, that's not normally a thing. Like, oh yeah, I didn't even know this buck was here. But
Yeah.
I feel like we've had a pretty good inventory this year with all the cameras we got out.
The next day when Mike shot that 12 pointer and that deer, I didn't realize that deer wasn't bigger, didn't have more spread. But we had that on film numerous times, especially on some of those cutting links up on top of the hill there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's the craziest. Well, you saw it. No, you didn't. You haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of it. I haven't seen it in person, but
Yeah, that was crazy. I think that might be one of Frank's offspring.
yeah, Mike said the body on it was just not big at all. Like he might have been a year and a half or two.
I think he was a
Say
year
that's
and a half. It was small. I mean, he was hanging next to 2.5-year-olds, and he was tiny.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
You would not believe. I can't wait to put him on the scale. Jimmy, I think we took does. No, I didn't, but you guys did. I mean, we had does that I think weighed more than what that buck's going to weigh.
Yeah.
Oh, you
But,
guys
I mean,
haven't
I'd have
caught
shot
Mike's
him too.
buck yet?
We're cutting that tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to get a weight. And I'll tell you what, not to get into the Frank story, but Frank is built the exact same way. Very short deer.
Yeah, and his body, I could not, that picture of him on the meat pole.
It's
like,
crazy.
Didn't add up.
no, it looks like, no, it's just crazy.
I mean, I think the body on the buck that I shot up there was
Bigger.
well, I don't know about bigger, but it's close.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out when we put him on the scales tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll fit in your garage.
Probably not.
I mean, I don't, like, honest to God, you hanging him, I don't know if,
Well, because his body's shorter,
well,
Might be all right.
he'll fit.
So
So, Jimmy, how about your first week?
my opening day strategy was to be on the crest of the hill up top where I had seen Frank the year before. And I had moved that stand from where I saw Frank to where Frank came from, because when we come up the road there to the top of the hill on the four-wheelers, there's got to be like just a tiny little bench in there where they lay
Yep.
that we can't see them from the top, but we can't see them from when we come up the hill either. Because that day that I saw Frank, I drove up the hill on the four-wheeler, right at daybreak. And then I hopped in my tree stand, and he was already walking at me. So I'm like, he was standing there when I drove by, and I didn't see him. So there's got to be like some break in the hill there
Yep.
between my stand and that trail where I'm not seeing these deer where they're coming from. So I wanted to get right down in there. And I really didn't hunt that stand at all during archery. I hunted it once. And it was after I killed my buck and I had a nice 8-point come through.
So could you see down to that bench when you from your stand where it is now?
Where my stand is now is right on the crest looking at the road, so I can actually see the whole flat up top and the logging road down below.
Yep. Nice.
So I'm watching where he came from last year, and I made a mock scrape in there, and he was on that mock scrape twice, I think, both at night, but all it takes is once for him to slip up. So I sat in there, and I had a spike come by right off the bat, and then I had your buck come in about a half an hour later. He came in 15 yards behind me, and I let him go, and he caught my wind, and he actually went back up and around me and must have came down to you later in the day. But then I saw the buck that Adam shot probably half an hour after that, and then I probably went like an hour and a half. And then I was hearing something again, and I couldn't tell from where, but they were coming right from my double ladder stand on the point.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There was 2 does over there, and they just, I mean, I was going to shoot a good doe if I had a shot at a good doe. And they freaking walked right to the base of my tree. The one stayed out like 70 yards, but the other one walked right to the base of my tree. And I had the hammer cocked. I was using my muzzle loader. I had the hammer cocked, and I had the sights on her. But it was getting to the point where I was like doing the shuffle because she was like under me, and I was trying to get to where I could shoot her broadside when she got broadside at 5 yards. But she stopped quartering to me at 5 yards. And the doe that I shot earlier this year with my muzzleloader up north, I lost some meat on that and kind of made a shitty shot on that deer. And that kind of weighed heavy on me, and I really didn't want to waste any meat or make a bad shot. So I told myself in my muzzleloader I was not shooting unless it was perfect broadside and I knew I had a good rest and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
So she stopped quartering too, and then she turned and ran straight away right back to where she came from, and took the other one with her. And I never had a broadside shot at either of them, so I didn't bother. But that was all I saw out of that stand, which was 6, I think, in the morning. I saw a doe down below you blowing on the side hill. She had been blowing at you because the wind was coming out of the north that morning.
Yeah, I thought I heard one blowing over there.
Yeah, so I saw her. So that was 6 I saw out of that stand. And then we went back at lunchtime and then went back out. I went back out earlier than everybody else. You guys were warming up stew, and I was like, I got to get back out there. And I got back out there and went to the property line stand, the one that I moved. And I got in it, got set up, and I turned around. There was 3 deer walking right across the crest. And I'm like, go figure, that's like 20 yards from where I had my stand. And it was a nice doe and a little one, and then a buck popped out with them. No shots, and the buck wasn't that great. So they got away, and then right at dark, I had a bunch of activity come from below me and then above me. I saw 5, and there was grunting and chasing going on down below me, coming up off the side hill. And then when I went to climb down, I took one last listen to make sure nothing was close before I climbed down. And I could hear shit stomping around above me, whether they were still chasing up there or whether it was just deer walking through on the bench above me. So I had a bunch of stuff going on, but nothing happened, and I ended up seeing like 14 deer on opening day, and not getting one. And then Sunday was, I don't know, Sunday wasn't a great day. It didn't seem like Mike shot his early, and I saw one when I was in the pines on the side hill, and I hunted till like 3 with Mike. And we did some drives or still hunts to each other and whatnot, and peeking over the side hill. And we didn't see shit the rest of the day. So
Yeah, it really shut down Sunday, didn't it?
yeah. So I mean, normally opening weekend, I've never done well opening weekend. I mean, I saw 21 deer on that nature conservancy that one day. I hunted with Billy.
Yeah.
And I didn't shoot a deer. So it's like I'm just kind of used to not shooting deer opening weekend. And having a nice buck and 2 does with my bow. I really wanted to savor my buck tag.
Yeah.
Whether frank or something, good. I wanted a good buck. I didn't want to shoot something small. So I ended up taking Monday off. Tuesday I went to state land, saw 7, and that was kind of the same deal as opening day. I just never had a good clean shot. The only one I had a good clean shot at was a yipper at 20 yards. I had no idea I was there. But I don't know whether I bumped them or there was people who were walking down along the lake. I don't even know what the hell they were doing. They were in blaze orange. One guy had a gun, one didn't, but they were just like walking the shoreline. And then they walked it back like a half an hour later. But I almost wonder if they bumped the deer up from the lake.
Yeah.
But the deer that I wanted to shoot was on the other side of the ravine. But the deer that was on my side was like 20 yards looking around, kept on looking at me. I couldn't get my gun up to try to move and get a shot at the one across the ravine. So just no good shots. It was a fun hunt. Saw a lot of deer and went to pull my camera in there. And conveniently, it started taking pictures on the 23rd, and I picked it up on the 24th. So I don't really think that all adds up, but
no.
Thanks for whoever erased my camera to leave the camera there for me, because at least it wasn't gone.
Right.
But somebody had to have erased it, because I mean there was no pictures of me setting it up or nothing, and it was working fine. So there's a big buck in there somewhere, because I was finding rubs on trees the size of your leg. So, but it was a fun hunt. It was good to get out there. I hunted till like 3. Then I had some stuff to go do, and then I didn't hunt Wednesday, or I hunted Wednesday evening. I went out to a farm our buddy has that nobody's been hunting gun on, and I saw 8 out there, but they're all between me and the truck. So, and that was when I was on my walk out. So I had to, I think I know where I want to go there now to try to shoot them. But we went out with our buddy, a couple of buddies on Thursday morning. We went out and did a couple of drives, and I had a bunch of deer on the side hill at sunup, and they were snorting at me, but they didn't really know what I was. They ended up feeding around and then heading across into the gully. I didn't have any shots at them. They were too far away. And then before these guys got to us driving the woods, I just happened to look into the woods towards Adam. He was in the middle, and I got a text message, but I didn't look at it because I saw the deer before I got the text. There was 2 does, and they freaking walked right up to me. No idea that we were doing a still hunt or a drive or nothing. And the one stepped out behind the second one stepped out into the opening. And I was like, yep, that's far bigger than the first one. So I just put the red dot on it and shot. She ran up in, I don't know, she went, 70 yards, Bill? When you came down through the woods, you found her piled up there.
Yeah.
So
it's funny, too, because that's exactly the last time we hunted there was exactly the same drive on the first drive of the day. And I walked the same route, and you shot a doe.
Oh, yeah.
Right on the beginning of the drive.
Yeah. You had to finish that one off, though.
Yeah. It was more my deer than yours. My shot was pretty lethal, but
right.
I won anyway. I didn't need that.
Yeah. No, I mean, you didn't need that one.
No.
So yeah, I could see Billy coming down through the woods, and I was kind of unsure of the hit because she ran off tail tucked, and it looked like she was hit hard, but she didn't go right down. But she must have gone down right out of sight from where I last seen her because she wasn't far at all. I actually saw her laying there when Billy was coming in, and I was directing Billy, but I never pulled binoculars up on her or anything. I just had my red dot. So I was just kind of watching it. I'm like, I think that's a white belly there. I'll lead Billy to that. And as soon as he came over the ridge, he's like, I got a bogey down here. I was like, all right, good. So we kicked, 15 deer out of that drive, but they did a bunch of stuff that just did not enable us to shoot much at all. So then we went down and did another piece, and you guys had a bunch of bucks running around.
Yeah.
But my wind was blowing back into the drive, and I just had a bad, shitty feeling that just nothing was going to happen for me because my wind was blowing right back into you guys, and you guys were all seeing the bucks up at the other end. So.
Yeah. So, well, I guess so. I'll start with that too, because I was one of the sitters, but I was like the end man. Obviously all I've got is a doe tag, so I'm doe hunting, and we're just starting the drive, and there's a railroad track, and I'm on the end of the drive on the railroad track, and one of the drivers, Greg, he's coming down the edge of the woods, right on the edge of the railroad track, and you kind of go, when you're driving, you kind of go in and out, so you can keep an eye on the railroad track if anything's going back and forth. And so barely had started the drive, and Greg comes over and he's like, huge buck coming right to you, Billy, right down the edge of the railroad. And I'm off the railroad track inside the hedgerow, looking over the fields where I can shoot. So I got my backpack and everything off, and I kind of start sneaking towards the railroad track to look out, and I get right to the edge, and I look out, and I catch something out of the corner of my eye, and there's this little block of woods we can't hunt. It's like three of the 4 sides is fenced in, and that's where all the deer go. When we do the drive, all the deer squirt out of the main woods into there. Is one of the places they go because they know they just can't be touched over there. So I catch movement, and here comes 2 bucks coming out of there into the drive, and one of them's limping, and I'm like, so I come over, we're using 2-way radios, and I come over there, I'm like, Greg, there's 2 more bucks coming into the drive. I go, don't move. I can see Greg down the railroad track straight down from me. And so I'm like leaning out, I'm watching these 2 bucks, and they're not seeing me. I don't know what the hell these 2 deer are looking at, but they're coming into this rigmarole we got going on. And they come through the goldenrod into the cattail, and they come down onto the edge of the railroad track, and they're getting ready to cross. And I'm looking out, looking for this big buck that Greg's telling me about. And all of a sudden, here's this, and he was a big buck. And we decided, I talked to Greg yesterday, and it's not the buck that Jimmy ended up shooting. So there was the second, like, real good buck in there. I don't know whether Jimmy's buck is pretty solid, but he very well could be bigger. I don't know, but he's coming and he's sneaking, like, amazing watching this deer, how he's handling this. He knows he wants to get to that little fenced in block of woods.
Yeah.
And he's like 50 yards from me, doesn't see me, but my wind it's a south wind. It's blowing straight at his face. And all of a sudden he caught my wind, and he freezes right in his tracks, and he's like 50 yards head on to me, right wide open. And I'm just looking at him, and he's looking at me, And he's like, I'm going to go over there. I'm like, no, you're not. So he starts to go up onto the railroad tracks, and I run up on the railroad tracks, and I'm like yelling, hey, whoa, 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 I'm like yelling. And he turns and he goes running right back in the woods, and I'm over the radio, Greg, big buck coming right back in, don't go anywhere, you know. And then these other 2 bucks are like, oh, what's going on over here? And they go running right in there. So it's like chaos. Like we're on the radios.
Those
like
other 2 kept coming into the drive.
Yeah, they cross the railroad tracks and go right in there. So Greg's in there, and he goes and he gets to a spot where he can see well, and all of a sudden they're shooting, and Greg shoots, and apparently a buck comes up, like it was trying to get out of there, and it didn't see him, and it almost ran him over. And at 10 yards, he shot at it, missed it, and the buck ran past him and comes back out to the railroad tracks and is running straight north away from him. Can't shoot on the railroad tracks, so there's nothing he can do.
Yeah.
Deer's running away, and doesn't get another shot, and his gun was jammed too, so he's nothing he could do. And so I'm watching, and here come these 2 bucks that went into the drive. They're like, holy shit, what's going on here? I'm getting the hell back out of here. So they go running back across the railroad tracks, headed towards safety. And so I set my gun down, and I go running across the railroad tracks to chase them, to try to chase them back in. I end up running in. I'm in goldenrod. This shit's got to be, I don't know what it's not normal goldenrod, whatever it is, I don't know. But this stuff,
there's cattail in there, isn't there?
There's cattail. It's probably those Phragmites or whatever.
Yeah.
This shit's tall, and there's a deer trail just pounded down. And I'm running down this deer trail, and I'm like 15 yards. All of a sudden, I come around this little bend, and there's this buck. He's like looking right straight at me, and it's the buck that Greg ended up shooting later on towards the end of the drive. He's like, looks at me, he's like, holy shit. He turns and he starts running away, and I'm like, Greg, buck coming right back at you. So this buck's running back to him, and so it was like pure chaos. So I'm like running down the railroad track. I run back to my station, I post up, and I can see the pushers coming through, and they're like almost out. And this little buck that I hadn't seen yet, he comes blowing out of the woods at 100 miles an hour right out in the middle of this open field. And he's just gone, heading towards town. And so I'm just sitting there kind of watching everything. I'm like, well, the pushers are at the end of the woods. I'm like, drives over, and I'm like packing my stuff up, and then I'll let Jimmy take it from there. What ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to all this shit going on the radio, and I had no idea where anything was at this point in time, but I just knew you guys had a ton of shit going on up there. And I was at the west corner of the woods from you guys, and I could see you, Billy.
Were you posted up, Jim, or you?
Yeah, I got a tree stand down there right on the corner of the woods. So I can see there's a backfield there that kicks out. There's like a real narrow field.
Mm-hmm.
Mike's got a ladder stand on it. Somebody always sits in the ladder stand. So we put Adam over there, and normally the deer will kick out and blow down through there, but I just think like all those fields are plowed up, and I don't think anything's been using them much. So I don't think there's a ton of deer in here to begin with. But apparently what was in there the other day was just a bunch of good deer.
Yeah.
So, you guys were going through talking all your stuff, and Greg had shot, and then Greg was like, I'm going to finish the drive and then I'll go back and check. So I was just hanging out, and then I heard branches snapping, and I'm like, well, this is either a deer coming to me or one of the drivers is coming out. I mean, that shit's so thick, I can only see like 50 yards in there. And finally I see blaze orange, and I'm like, son of a bitch. I'm like, they're through and nothing came out. I'm like, that's crazy. So I'm sitting there, and he's out 10 yards away, from the edge of the field. And I'm like, all right, it's probably time to climb down. And I took one last look in the backfield, and all I see is just this monster just running across the field. And I'm like, holy shit, he kicked out the backside. And Adam was down the edge of that field, but Adam doesn't have a buck tag, and he's running right at Adam. And I'm like, I can safely take a couple shots before he gets there. So I pulled up, and it's wide open there. I mean, it's a bomb, but it's wide open. And I'm like, I got to try a couple of shots. So at the first one, I got a red dot, Benelli, and it's not, I mean, it's set up as a home defense gun, but I've shot it at 100 yards, and it's right on the money. So I don't know, Bill, you've hunted in there before and ranged across to that ridge. You said it was like 180.
Yeah. Where you shot your buck is exactly, it's got to be
Yeah.
like right where my buck was standing when I shot him last year.
It was. So the first shot, I was excited. I popped the safety off. I got out in front of him, and I led him by a mile, and I was like over his head. And I pulled the trigger, and I'm like, damn, that wasn't even close. So I like racked around, and I remember I like pulled it back to him. And I think I put it like right on the tip of his nose, and I didn't like over exaggerate high or out front. I just put it like right on the tip of his nose, and he wasn't flying. He was just kind of at a trot, thinking he was gone. And that one plugged him right in the back of the rib cage. Then I ended up having to go up and finish him off again. So it was a bit of a rodeo, but it was freaking unbelievable.
Yeah, that's the
I
only.
don't know how I hit that deer that far away. That was nuts.
Luck. It's. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's the downside of doing deer drives is that I mean, almost every you very rarely get a shot at a stationary deer. You know, and that your situation there was. You know, obviously a lucky shot but you made a good shot. You know, you hit a deer running at 180 yards with a red dot. But I saw, you know, you shot the first shot and I look over in that direction and I could see, I mean, I was 400 plus yards away. I could see his white rack running across the field. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, that's a big buck.
Dude, I turned and I just saw that, just the body alone right off the bat.
Yeah, he was a horse.
Kicking out the back of the drive. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that thing is huge. And, you know, then I saw the horns and I'm like, I got to shoot before he gets to Adam.
Yeah.
And luckily I hit him on the second one, but unreal.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That was a big deer.
I can't wait to weigh him because he just feels like goddamn brick. Like, I'm a little worried because I think he had some shit going on previously. I don't know whether it was health-wise, whether like gutting that deer, it just felt like the toughest deer I've ever gutted, just like skin-wise, and like pulling the diaphragm back and just, I don't know, everything just felt tough on him. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, his you'll see him, Dad, like his feet, he's got like something going on with his feet, whether it's running through, you know, mud farm fields or something. I mean, it's his toes are all, is it like his two front feet or?
Are they curled?
No, they're like
curled.
They're like almost rubbed off. Like they're just, but they're like, they're like oversized. It's weird.
Yeah.
He's got big ass feet. It's the weirdest thing. But then his back leg, we couldn't figure this out. I'm sure you guys, when you cut it up tomorrow, you get a better idea. But like, there was no blood. There was no wound. But like his back right leg was like a clean snap right at the knee, like broken. But Jimmy, when it was running, he didn't see anything that led him on.
No, when he was running, he was on all four. He was not. I don't know if it's when, you know, I hit him and then buckled his back end weird and it just snapped his leg. Like, that's the only thing I can figure because he did go down like a sack of shit. Like, he just freaking, when he got hit, like his back end just dropped, but he was still moving forward. And I'm wondering if that like planted his leg and snapped it on top of it. But that's the only thing I can figure because he was definitely not. I would have noticed a leg dangling running across the field.
Oh yeah, you'd have seen that. That had to happen.
Yeah.
In all of that somehow.
Yeah, without any sort of blood or nothing, you would just assume that, you know.
So I mean, long story short, it's 5'4".
It is 5'4".
Yeah.
With two really good bucks.
Two really good bucks. Yeah. I'm pumped for you, Jim. It's awesome.
I know, it's definitely my best year. So
I don't know if you know this or not, but my Rut Madness Challenge team is in first place right now by 100 inches.
Is that before or after I just turned in my other 130 inches?
That's a good question. But the other two guys on my team have both shot 130-inch bucks. So
see, that's the thing. If nobody
really
else on my team has got anything, then I'm
right
on an island.
Yeah, Dallas messaged me yesterday and told me, I was like, oh shit. I'm like, that's awesome. I was like,
it is pretty cool.
Yeah. And this point in the season to be that much of a lead, that's pretty good. And there's two guys that haven't shot anything. So no, one guy that hasn't shot anything.
I haven't even looked at my team to see if they have gotten anything yet, but yeah, for me to put down two 130s I'll take it because that was pretty much my whole thing all year was I wanted to try to shoot a little bit more mature deer.
Yeah.
And I would say both of those are at least 3.5.
at least.
I don't think that buck that I shot at the farm there on Thanksgiving, I don't think that's a 2.5-year-old. He's just,
No, hell no.
his neck is just unbelievably huge.
No, that was too big a deer.
No.
Yeah.
No, he's 3 or maybe 4. That'd be interesting to see.
So I was hoping for one of those this year, and I got 2 of them. So
Yep. Yeah,
I'll take it.
it's been a hell of a
It's
year.
been an absolutely bizarre year. You know, you've probably never hunted less.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he was kind of Swiss cheese, so I'm gonna end up having to shoot a few more doe to take care of the meat loss, probably. But
Yeah.
that's all right.
A lot of burger in that one.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll start kind of wrapping this up. We've been at it for a little while here. I have no idea how long. I know it's after 10 o'clock
Yeah.
but it's been an awesome season so far. We still got 3 weeks left. And I know we've kind of tailed off on, for the people that are listening, we've kind of tailed off on the Freedom Radio stuff. I think everybody's just exhausted. Honestly, that's a huge part. And it's been really tough, especially over the last couple of weeks to wrangle people to get our schedules aligned. But we've got a lot of our listeners and our good friends have had an incredible season too. So we've got a ton of people that we'll be getting with here, just to do regular episodes to hear their stories. And, we'll definitely be getting Angelo on to hear about Frank and Beans and get that story out there to everybody. And if you haven't seen the videos and the pictures that we posted up on Facebook and Instagram of him and of the kill story, pretty special watching Angelo talk. You could tell he was pretty emotional there towards the end. He wouldn't show that, but seemed like he was pretty heartfelt that he was able to sit behind that buck and be sitting there with you guys too. So it's pretty awesome.
And it's so cool to see a guy like him get it, who he hunts with Joe's gang, and he hunts with us, and does overnights in our camp. I mean, half the season he's with us, and he's grown to be a very good friend, and we enjoy camp together, and he gets it. He thinks like we do, and there was really no gloating. There was just all appreciation and admiration for the moment, which is
For sure.
you know what I mean? It was just like I know I'm really glad, and I mean this. I commented on a post that I really feel blessed that I was able to be there, and for Jimmy and Mike and I to be there with Angelo on the recovery and to share that time with him, and it was awesome. And it's that was my hope with Frank and Beans, whether any of us got him. I just wanted somebody within our camps to get him, and thrilled to death to see Angelo. And Angelo won't shoot anything but a big buck. I mean, he's been probably 4 years, maybe 4 or 5, right, Jim, without one.
I think in the last, he said like 9 years he shot 2 bucks.
Yeah. So he's very selective, and it couldn't happen to a better guy. I couldn't be happier if I shot it myself,
Nope.
It was funny because all this shit's on social media now, and another kid messaged me today. He leases 115 acres there, where all them draws come together, right where we gutted the deer.
Oh yeah.
The end of the field.
Yeah.
There's that property up top there where all the turkeys are always up on the ridge.
Yep.
It's Friedman's or something like that. I don't remember what the hell the name is, but this kid leases that property.
Okay.
And when he saw the picture of it and saw us posting about it, he messaged me and he was like, one of Noto's get it? And I go, yeah, one of the guys that hunts with us in Noto's got it. And he was like, was that back towards Jamie Smith's old place? And I was like, yeah. He goes, 3 shots. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I heard him pull in at 7:15 on his 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
And Ange said, he's like, I didn't get there till 7:15, 7:30 and parked the 4-wheeler and walked in. And, he wasn't sitting 150 yards from his 4-wheeler. So,
yeah. And he wasn't in a stand or anything, which, goes to prove. And Billy, we talked about that on earlier episodes, that I told Angelo this too. I go, every single one of my record book bucks I shot sitting on the ground. So just, there's something to be said for that.
There is.
And that's deer hunting, right? That's the beauty of it. You never know what's going to happen. you never know. But nothing's going to happen if you're not out there.
Well, what's funny is we were just texting earlier, and I said I kind of appreciate the way it happened because, you know, it wasn't somebody that like studied this deer and like had all this information, was all jacked up and like wanted this deer more than anybody else.
Yeah.
It was just a guy that drove his four-wheeler out and walked back and sat down on a log, and the fucking deer walks up 15 yards away from him, and that's that. It's like you had to know that's the way it was going to work out.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad. I'm actually glad that it was that simple.
Yeah.
As to how that worked out.
Andy was gracious about it, you know, and,
Right.
and made a good shot. You know, his extra 2 shots were because he was scared that he was going to get away, and I don't even think he hit him either one. You know, like his first shot was the killing shot, and the you know, it's interesting too because both of our, you know, we had Frankenbeans and then we had Split Brow on the farm, and we haven't talked about it on the podcast yet, but on opening day, Split Brow was killed by a neighbor, you know, 2 or 3 farms over, you know, 4 miles, you know, not 4 miles, a couple miles from where we have a ton of experience with that deer. And it just same deal. The guy was just flat out lucky, but it wasn't the way that the deer was killed, the way it all went down was not, it just wasn't something you feel good about. You know, a deer that you had 3 years history with in that situation too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you just hear about it. It's like it was just a classic gun story, you know, and it sucks because it's like you want to hear just a good ending to that story, you know, same deal. And it's not somebody that we're close with that we could go on the recovery with and get pictures and the story and talk to them. Like, you know, you want that closure, you know, that's the biggest part of it. Yeah.
You know, the pictures, like we posted up some pictures of him from 2018 and 2019. And, you know, he was very much more symmetrical back then. And I told Angelo, I said, you know, this deer would have been really cool if he maintained that, you know, either way he was a monster if he was symmetrical like that on both sides. But the fact that this year that right side just went freaking crazy.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, it's just like, that makes that it's just like it's the craziest thing, and that really makes that buck that much more special. That it's just like that right side. I mean, I don't even know. He's like, "What do you think it'll score?" I'm like, I don't even know where to, you know, how you would do that.
Yeah. I might try to slap a tape on it quick tomorrow just to try to get a rough guesstimate of what that thing scores.
Yeah,
if we got time. I don't know if we'll have time or not, but
it's a monster.
Yep.
And it's nice. We got to find another one now to hone in on and follow like that.
We will. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up.
Way to end the week, you know, end the opening week.
My week's not over yet. I'm gonna go out tomorrow morning and make it 6-4 over it. You know.
Oh, are you really?
So yeah.
That's fine. Good luck.
I'm gonna take the long range rifle so I can just.
I'll be getting the shop ready for our cutting. So don't be late.
I will. I'm just gonna add another one to the count first.
All right, let's wrap her up. I've had the light flashed at me 3 times, so I'm probably in trouble. Yeah. All right.
All right. Hey, great opening week, guys.
It was fun. Thanks everybody for listening.
Says it's a family tradition.
Family tradition.
Congratulations and keep feeding them.
Keep feeding them.
See ya.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I guess if you made it all the way to the end of this discussion, you must have really enjoyed the podcast. So if you did, make sure you have subscribed to it on whatever platform you're listening on right now. Make sure to subscribe so you're alerted when we post up new content. That helps us quite a bit. I am being told, or I'm learning via listening to other people say this sort of stuff at the end of their podcasts. Also, give us a follow on social media. That's where we do most of our interacting. Instagram being the most popular, so make sure you follow us on there. And like I said in the beginning, tell a friend, share it, help us keep this thing growing. It's definitely fun growing this with the local flavor. So thank you, everybody. Have a good week.